Hey everybody, savagelandsnews coming in this time with an extra special guest, Ryan, the Wombat, Dash. Top 8'd the Battle Hardened here in Portland. First ever Portland large event. Amazing Dash player. Probably, my guess, one of the best, if not the best, in the Pacific Northwest. Kind of a large claim. He's a humble individual, as you can see while he shakes his head. But we're here to do a hero introduction series on Dash, the Inventor Extraordinaire. Very complex hero, very far out of my skill range, so I'm very happy to have Ryan here with me to walk you guys through how to play this hero. So Ryan, why would you play Dash?
Well, Dash is very flexible, and her deck building can be very aggressive or be very controlling, or you can play mid-range, which is nice to have those options. And because of it, you're very, I guess, kind of equal into your matchups. There's no I guess if you play flex Dash, there's no auto losses, there's no auto wins. So you have to earn your wins, but you're in every game that you play. As far as the aggro version of Dash, she has very explosive turns. She can very consistently do very high damage turns, which is very nice. She has a lot of blues, so she can pay for taxes. She can utilize her resources very efficiently.
So when you say very flexible play styles, I mean, those of you out there who know Dash understand this, but those new players out there, what do you mean by flexible playstyles, right?
Well, so the deck itself can be built in many different varieties. So you can go this very aggro, aggressive boost plan, and you can have your sideboard that goes you side in even more mechanologist cards for fatigue to just have that extra large deck size to kind of get past the fatigue. You can do a flex game plan where you have, a 60 card mechanologist. You can boost, so 100% of the time you're going to hit your boost and always have to go again. And then when you hit those kind of matchups where you need to side in your D-Rex and your items and go with the pistol game plan, you have that option. You can also go what is considered what is called the Tree Frog Dash, which is
such a funny name.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pure control, life gain. You're just trying to fatigue them out while you set up this engine for the end game, and you're shooting the pistol for 12, 15 damage a turn, which is, you're going to leak damage and you're eventually just going to kill them through that because they can't block that out turn to turn. And then, of course, with Dynasty, you now have the introduction of the Hanabi Blaster as well as the Hyperdriver, the Mechanoid build, which can have very explosive turns with high octane and can output, 30 to 40 damage on a turn if you set it up right. So she just has a lot of different options, and every time you flip that hero over, your opponent has to ask themselves what game plan do they think that they're running into, which can be very beneficial to you.
Yeah, it's the hardest part about playing Dash. They flip their hero, it almost gives you nothing.
Yeah,
right. There's 5 different pretty good builds that you can play with her.
Yeah, and some heroes you even have the options. You can play the different builds into it and still be successful, which is nice.
Yeah, at the same. I've had a Dash play multiple builds at the same time, boost Dash while building items. It was
yeah, exactly. You can even pivot during the game depending on how the game's going, which is assuming you don't boost away your important cards.
That's true. We'll get to that. We'll get to boost variants next on the next slide. But so sorry to distract you, but flexible blue density, right? She works really well into ice heroes. She has a lot of blues natively, but what else?
Well, low living legend points. So if you are trying to stick to one deck for a while, you can stick with Dash, and I don't think she's going to living legend very soon.
Yeah.
All our cards either block 3 or they block 0. And the cards that block 0 are the cards you want to play out and get onto the battlefield. So, generally blocks very well. I mean, if you're playing against aggressive heroes, you have cards that can just destroy their equipment, like against Ninja. Nothing feels better than pulling all their equipment and destroying their, well, at the time, Mask of Momentum, but you can even destroy Mask of the Pouncing Leaks potentially with your T-Bones and your magnetic shockwaves. So that's always a great feeling. That's actually what happened to me when I first pivoted from Ninja over to Dash, was getting all my equipment destroyed by Nathan on turn 2.
Everfest had literally just come out. I saw the new cards and I was like, I can break people's stuff. Let's give it a shot. I brought it to the armory. I broke 2 ninjas' headpieces in like 3 turns. One of them was Ryan here.
Yep.
And he immediately switched to Dash and started bending me over the table with it. It was pretty brutal.
Yeah, it was a rough time.
Okay. So now that we know why you would probably play Dash, why wouldn't you play Dash?
Well, so like we said, there's no bad matchups depending on your build.
Yeah.
There's also no great matchups. So you do have to earn all of your matchups. And when you're playing the flex version in particular, they're very close games. You play against aggro, you have 1 or 2 life left. You play against, control or like Oldhim and it's still very close all the time. So you do got to make sure that you're playing well turn to turn and making the right decisions.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Dash is hard. Very hard hero to play, honestly. So many different lines, so many different builds, so many different play styles. Yeah. Okay. Why else?
Well, you can fatigue very easily because you're burning through your deck very quickly when you're boosting. And against heroes that block out very well, you can end up at a point where you have nothing to do but essentially pistol a couple times maybe.
Yeah.
And eventually they're just going to take over if you don't have that end game engine set up. There's a lot of variants. Some games you just boost away all your good red attacks and you're just loaded with a bunch of blues and they do lower damage. So it can be hard to push damage through when that happens. A lot of heroes can target Dash. A lot of generics do very good work against her. Smashing Good Time, Erase Face, Command and Conquer, sort of. Most notably by Guardians, especially with Pummel, because you're typically playing a pistol game plan into them. So those can really ruin you because you're usually arsenaling your D-Racks or your items, and you do not want to lose those in your arsenal.
Guardians recently have been doing some like really brutal stuff in the Dash, right? Like smashing Good Time, rouse the ancients into like crush the weak for 17. I'm gonna break your item. Even Warhorn, right? Warhorn.
Yeah.
Another generic item any hero can put in their deck to just like flick your items off the table,
Yeah. Guardians have generally they've reached the point where they've become aggressive enough that the flex version of Dash, trying to pivot into that control, is sometimes not enough control to really save your life total and set up the items.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to understand the exact number of items you need to really get through in the end game plan.
Yeah.
Oldhim, you typically need 2 induction chambers, 3 plasma purifiers, just because they block so well. Bravo, you can get away with 2 plasma purifiers. You kind of got to understand that. Recently, with Fai becoming popular and the Guardians becoming super aggressive, I found that it's becoming harder and harder to set up those 5 items throughout the game.
Yeah.
Well, I guess 4 items because you start with 1 already. So sometimes you can only set up 3, and by the time you just got to like ditch the setup and just start loading up the items and start shooting them down.
So yeah, like holding on by dear life. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it can become pretty difficult.
Yeah, Oldhim's out of nowhere just started like hitting you for 10 every single turn, 12, 17.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage to take, especially when the cards you're saying don't block.
Every item you add is another non-block, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so she's targetable by every hero, which is a newer problem that I think has come out mostly out of the new sets, right? Like she didn't used to be so easily targetable, but
yeah.
Okay, but aside from that, what else?
Well, so for deck building, depending on how comfortable you are with your ratios, most aggro decks want to run 100% Mechanologist cards.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a constraint, especially when you're trying to pivot. Obviously, Mechanologist cards block well, so that's like the good thing going for it. But in control, kind of the reds don't, they don't pitch to load up your items very well. So you're kind of just blocking with them. If you get loaded up with reds, that can be difficult. Of course, the more you side in non-mechnologist cards, the more variance you add into your boosting. So less go again potentially. So that can be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for an example, like I once was playing, obviously the Flex Dash version, and in my aggro plan, I have 100% mechnologist cards, so I'm never worried about boosting. But in one game, I was sideboarding, and I missed one of my D racks when I was siding out into my aggro plan, so I had 61 cards.
Oh.
And one Fate for Scene, and literally the first card I boosted, I hit that Fate for Scene and just shut me down immediately. And so, that's a risky run when you don't have mechnologist cards. So that's kind of a constraint that's put on the deck building.
Yeah,
on what you're running.
the more like turtle-y versions, right? Like every once in a while you want to take a risk and then you boost one time and you lose.
Yeah, I've done that too, where we've played and I'm playing more control and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to boost this card just to get extra damage, and I hit that mechanologist item that I need.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah. The issue is too with the blues is over time Dash has been able to run less blues because of the cheaper cost boost cards they have.
Yeah.
The issue is like typically 4 of your blues, potentially more depending on Techlo Pounders that you run, those blues don't block.
Yeah.
Which can be an issue when you are playing that pistol game plan is obviously you want to pitch your blues, but sometimes you just need to block.
Yeah.
And those cards don't block. So that can be hard sometimes. The other reasons not to play Dash is they don't have a lot of good on-hit effects. I think Combustible Courier is about the only good on-hit.
Like Dominate on-hit or Combustible Courier, right?
You have high-speed impact. Most people don't care about high-speed impact because typically the next attack you're following up with is just pure damage, and it's typically like, I don't know, 3 to 5 damage, maybe 6. Or a trick a lot of Dash players like to do is they like to play high speed impact to see if they can force you to block with 2 cards and then follow up with the payload, which is just automatically dominated.
I've been hit by that one before.
Yeah. So it's been good in the past. It doesn't seem so good lately as more people have played against Dash.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then when you think about like really good Dash players and average Dash players, right? Like what are the differences in skill that you see that typically separate them?
The great Dash players I've watched and seen, they understand their deck, what they have left, what they're able to count, how much more boost they have. They're able to pitch stack and set up like an endgame max velocity.
Yeah.
Players that aren't necessarily great, and myself included at times, have failed to do that. Like, I pitch stack it, but I forgot to include how many cards extra I need to be able to boost.
Yeah. Okay.
So that can be a trick. Knowing how to block, especially when you're in those control type game plans where you're trying to set up the items and you're playing against Dori or Oldhim. Efficiently using your blocks, knowing when to use your D-racks can be a challenge at times.
Yep.
Maximizing your chain links. Certain cards care about the next attack you boost on the chain link, as well as the number of times you've boosted on this chain link. So knowing those chain links and when to break it, because you're often breaking it because of loading up pistol items or using Techlo Foundry Heart. Those will break the chain, and that can essentially, you can lose value on certain cards because of it.
And whenever you break the chain, you technically can allow equipment to block again, right?
Exactly.
So like on a very pivotal turn, like you might give them extra block for no reason, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, that typically comes up a lot in Oldhim just generally because of
Shield.
Rampart.
Ugh.
So,
yeah.
because typically you're running a pistol game plan into them and you're breaking the chain a lot. But it can also be very relevant in the aggro matchups too.
Yeah.
Where they're able to get like extra block out of the Flame Scale Furnace or Grasp of the Arakni, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Knowing your matchup, what items to start with. Generally, it's smart to just start with Induction Chamber.
Yeah. Recently,
yeah. That's the best card to start with if you're unsure. Knowing when to start with Pounder, certain decks will take this approach where when you start with Pounder, they're just going to block out till it's gone. just to save that life. And then you're kind of at a point where all you have is the pistol and you don't have any item to go with it. So kind of knowing when to take advantage of like starting with pounder versus induction chamber can, require a little more knowledge. Knowing when to, not necessarily knowing when to use maximum velocity, but knowing when to not use it. It can, so since Crown of Providence has come out, that's obviously been a great card to assist with, because if you arsenal that maximum velocity, you have at least one time where you can just bail on it, get it back to the bottom, send it to the bottom for the end game, and then just kind of move on from there. It can get stuck in arsenal if you arsenal it when you shouldn't. Having it in your hand, knowing when to block. I think the most important time when to decide whether to block or use it is against Dromai, because it is a popper. I've had many times where I played Dromai, and the Dromai matchup is very tricky. So it's like, do I use this as a popper, or do I, if I'm able to get it off, do I try to use it to push damage to get it through? Dromais can be very tanky, so it's kind of a difficult decision. I've made the wrong decision many times. I've made it right multiple times. It's tough to figure out sometimes.
You're honestly like the craziest maximum velocity dash I've ever seen, though. Like, you hit me with 2 minimum a game, which is ridiculous. No other dash does that to me.
Yeah. See, the thing about maximum velocity is a lot of people used to say, "Oh, it's so hard to get off." It's not that hard to get off, really. Especially now when you got your T-bones, 0 to 60s, 0 hits, and now pulse wave harpoon. You have these, and then high speed impact. You have these 0 cost, 1 cost boost attacks. You can often, I find it's easy just to get off with the blue and like Tickle Foundry Heart. It's not that hard.
You've legitimately hit 3 in a game before against me. I've literally never seen anybody else do that to me.
And
ever.
Even if you have Teklo Core out, it just makes it all that much easier. I've literally I've done maximum velocity turns where I've had I've literally had 2 maximum velocities, 1 in hand, 1 in arsenal, and I was able to get one off and pocket the other one in arsenal and do it again immediately. It's like,
you do something different. There's something about that.
It's not common, but it can happen.
Okay.
Maximum velocity is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, it's the most miserable card to get hit by for no reason.
You can also flex between game plans if you need to. If you're going very aggressive and boosting, and you see that they're trying to fatigue you out, you can, depending on if you sideboarded correctly, you can pivot into a more pistol game plan and potentially kind of slow down the game, set up an engine, and kind of close out the game that way. That can be kind of tricky because when you're boosting, obviously there's that variance, and you can hit those key cards like your induction chambers and stuff, which can make it more difficult.
The crazy thing is you can do that like in the middle of the game sometimes. Like if things aren't going your way, like you boost out your reds and like you're running out of threat density, and then you just start playing your items out. It's pretty hard to deal with as the opponent. Going from a boost dash right into an item dash. Like sometimes you're not mentally prepared for that.
Or even the other way. Sometimes you set up your items or you use up your non-mechnologist cards, and it's like, oh, I'm free to boost whenever I want now. And often in the control game plans, I'll do that. Like, oh, I've used up all my D-racks. I guess I will just play this red throttle, boost it, and then just pistol for 4 or 5 each.
It's a lot of damage.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts scaling pretty hard out of control towards the end.
The last thing is just, I guess, comes back to that item knowledge, knowing when to play items, knowing how many items you need. Typically the flex dash will run 2 induction chambers, 3 purifiers. That's kind of like the main setup. Certain game plans you can get away with less purifiers. It's also kind of knowing when to bring out the next item. If you start with induction chamber, question is, do you bring out another induction chamber next via Spark of Genius, or do you bring out the plasma purifier? Knowing those, kind of that order and how to maximize value out of your resources. That's kind of a important thing. I believe, I can't remember the YouTube channel right now, but there is a YouTube channel out there that actually goes through the optimal value of bringing out your items versus, what resources you need versus, having 1 induction chamber, 2 or 3 versus, those different setups with the purifiers, and
We'll find that.
I think
we'll find that link and I'll put it in the description below for you guys.
yeah, I'll have to find it out because I can't remember the name off the top of my head.
no need to freak out about it. We'll find that and put it in the description below.
Yeah.
So after this, we've talked a little bit about Dash. We'll dive into her matchups real quick. And then after that, we'll go into the deck list, key cards, all that kind of stuff. So hang on tight. We'll see you there. Okay, let's dive into it. So obviously, we're going to put Dash right here in a skill matchup. Is it a skill matchup or is it like a variance matchup? Because sometimes that's like the Rhinar matchup really isn't so skillful. It's more like who draws Blood Rush first. Is it? What do you think about the matchup, the mirror?
I guess it depends on the player and their build. I've honestly only played the mirror match once. They went with an aggro game plan, and I decided to go with the defensive pistol.
Okay.
It was very close. I ended up winning because, I mean, I just blocked out and set up when I could, and, you know, they just ran out of threats. I don't know if that honestly is always the right decision.
Okay.
It's honestly one of the scariest matches I come across when I play Dash is running into another Dash.
Honestly, the mirror in every hero
exactly.
is just like so scary. And
it's
Dash,
like, they just have so many options that you could be playing into.
Yeah, and you always feel like a little bit more embarrassed if you lose in the mirror than like anybody else, because it's like, this is my hero. Why am I losing? You know. Okay, so what do you think about Oldhim? Good matchup for you, bad matchup, or skill matchup?
It's interesting. It kind of depends. During the battle hard in Portland, I was very prepared for Guardian at the time. They weren't as aggressive to where the flex game plan I felt very comfortable into, and actually won all my Guardian matchups that day. So it felt very good. As Fai became more prevalent, they become so much more aggressive that the flex game plan became more difficult to flex into that control. They started doing so much damage and actually going really wide that it actually became a sort of a bad matchup. So it really kind of depends on your build. I mean, it could be good if you went Tree Frog Dash. It's good. It's a good matchup. You just block out. They can go as aggressive as they want. You're gonna set up. You're gonna have enough life, and then you're just gonna shoot them down at the end.
We might need to make like a build matchup here.
And that's true.
Like skill.
Because I feel like a lot of Dash might just be skill.
All right, hold on, everybody. I'm gonna be right back, and we're back. So we're gonna put Oldhim in the build dependent. This is gonna be unique to Dash, I guess, because Dash has 5 different builds. Some of them have better win-loss ratios into certain heroes than not, right? So I guess Oldhim, what you're saying is Control Dash, Tree Frog Dash, full item has a better matchup into him than Boost Dash, because Boost Dash is just going to get blocked out.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Now, a little bit easier. What do you think about Levia?
A little bit easier. I've played it once. I played it once and they conceded on turn 3. So I guess it's good.
I'm going to say it's a good matchup. No matter what happens, you're pretty much as fast, if not faster on average, although Levia can go really fast.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then if things go wrong, you just turtle make items and watch them explode.
Yeah, and they don't have that intimidate that Rhinar does. So if you wanted to be more controlling and block out, you can do so.
Yeah.
Lexi, I've not played that matchup a lot. Her Chilling Ice Veins, where it's discard pay 1 on Fuse, can be
troublesome.
I don't like that because I don't like giving up cards, pitching cards to I don't know, pay for 1 resource or potentially 2.
It's got to be pretty good though, because you block really well. You can go long. You can do a lot with you have so many blues.
Exactly, and Lexi doesn't really want to block either, and Dash can do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So with very limited testing, so far, I guess I'd say it's all right.
Okay.
Dromai, definitely very skill intensive.
Dromai is a hard hero to play and to play against. Honestly, Dromai, in my head, is one of the most complicated heroes in the game.
Yeah, it's tough for Dash because usually in that game plan, you're doing a mix of boosting and setting up items.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the variance that comes along with potentially boosting away those items.
Yeah.
Knowing how to evaluate the board state can be difficult. Knowing when to push damage with your max velocity or using it as a popper can be difficult at times. So yeah, there's a lot of decisions that go in, and it's very back and forth.
Yeah, she's like super defensive, so playing boost in her isn't always like the best idea, probably the worst idea. And then like going items in high octane, like where you can clear dragons out. Is she pitch stacking? Is she not pitch stacking? Like how fast is she going? Like can you kill enough drag? Yeah, it's a pretty hard matchup.
Yeah,
It's
one of my least favorite to run into.
Yeah, Dromai's hard in both ways, but I think that's what makes her okay. She's hard to play and hard to. What do you think about Katsu?
Katsu is felt pretty good.
Yeah, feels like it.
Because I mean they used to run typically mask momentum, and you can block with a card, it's fine, and you can still do good damage on your turn. And they don't typically want to block at all. They have a lot of 2 blocks, so
Yeah.
obviously your card's blocked for 3. And then if for some reason they're not utilizing mask momentum, that's to me. I love not seeing mask momentum. It means I don't have to block at all. I can just do a bunch of damage to you, and I typically find out that I end up on top at the end of that.
Yeah, I feel like the same. Like there's only like a couple lines Katsu presents that you're like, okay, I'll block now, I guess.
Yeah, he can do lots of big damage and stuff. Kano's pretty good. You have access to AB3
On your
and
best equipment.
and you have a good
On
amount of
some of your
blues.
best equipment.
Yeah, and you do a lot of damage. So you got good AB, you got lots of damage. He
Yeah.
has 30 health. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Exactly.
What about Vis?
Viserai, I always felt I haven't played a lot against Viserai, but when I have, it's felt the hardest of the aggro matchups. He can definitely high roll a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got that. Well, I guess the Arcane Barrier is not a huge deal.
Arcane Barrier cost is a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's bad. It's kind of like I've definitely like lost games where if I made better decisions, I would have won.
Okay.
So it's a little bit more skill. He does do that mixed damage and does have these very explosive turns.
Yeah.
He can also do a lot of builds where he blocks out and builds up rune chance. And
Yeah, I would have guessed that it's like kind of okay because you're so blue heavy. Plus your AB equipment is like built into your hero.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Viserai can always just like one shot you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like
Yeah.
Revel.
Recent meta, he's been nowhere to be seen. So it's like
Yeah,
kinda hard
that's
to
true.
evaluate
It's
a
hard to
little
tell.
bit,
Azalea.
Azalea's felt pretty good to me. I've tested both boost and like more controlling into it, and I've yet to lose. The boost feels less good into it because of those dominate red and ledgers. They don't feel so good. Because like you can only do one action, which means you can like load up a pistol maybe, or you can just throw one attack at them. But generally, you got the tools to kind of deal with.
We have a nuts Azalea player here too. So like if you're feeling pretty good, you're feeling good.
Yeah.
What about Fai?
So me personally, I think my record in the Fai with Dash is like 80% I win. A lot of at the time I was running the Talishar. I believe Jason Zhang was kind of brought that in with the calling Singapore.
Yeah.
And so I was winning just on pistol into Fai. At the time, they weren't running a lot of the belittle. And then when I switched to Talishar, it was like they weren't Fais. They just want to play aggro. They don't want to block. And I think that is kind of a big determination in that win. But I was not struggling against Fais. You can do just as much damage as Fai. And they don't want to block.
And they can't block.
They block worse than you.
Yeah, they can't choose to block. Like that's how honestly the same way people ask me like, how do you beat Fai on Rhinar? It's like I can choose when I block.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to block.
Yeah.
And if you want to block, you block better.
Yeah, it's like, you presented Artavor, here's my hand. I don't care, right? Like
yeah.
And then on my best turn, you can't stop me. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean like 0 for 4, go again, like 0 to 60 is they have 0 for 3. Go again. Like
like Blazing Hedgehog is like one of their 2/4s.
Yeah, and it's like conditional too.
And it's conditional, and you have like a bunch of 4s. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. And 1 for 5s too. Like and you get like with 1 blue into pistol induction chamber is 4 for a card.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So it's pretty good.
That was Matt Rogers' explanation of his most recent deck. It was like, why would you play anything else but pistol? Because exactly what you said, blue equals 4.
Yeah, exactly. Like, pistol, chamber, pistol.
Yeah, it's
4
like,
every time. You can block out 9, pistol for 4.
My worst card is 4 damage. Yeah, pretty crazy. Okay, what do you think about Dori?
Dorinthia is definitely skill intensive. I mean, you typically want to play more defensive pistol into it. A while ago, pre-Dynasty, I was testing actually just full boosting into it and racing it, and I was consistently racing it, and actually that was my game plan into the Battle Hardened Portland. It was just to race it, and that was actually pretty successful at the time. Nowadays, with the new cards they get from Dynasty, I think you would go more into a pistol defensive.
The aura is just a free counter, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And Dori, like, the thing is, it's hard to like understand what Dori's going to do. Are they going to go tall? Are they going to go wide? So when you bring those defense reacts, you have the option to you can meet them at the going tall if that's the decision they make or whatnot. Yeah. So it's you can mitigate those counters a little bit easier, and then you can set up the pistols.
Yeah, if you give new Dori 2 counters and then she just plays the aura, you lose.
Yeah.
Like, you can't ever stop it.
Yeah, you just dump your hand and hope they they don't have that.
They don't have twinning blade. Yeah. What do you think about Rhinar?
Rhinar, so Rhinar, when I'm not playing against you, it feels very good because I just boost them into the ground. A lot of Rhinar players will just give me their cards, give me their blood rushes to block. Of course, when I play against Nathan, he arc smashes, rolls a 6, destroys all my crap, and I go from 100% to 0%.
I genuinely believe I can't lose the dash.
And having played against you many times, I honestly am scared to see Rhinar's dash at this point.
I'm willing to meet you in the skill, but like...
Yeah, I've made some changes when we played around Time of Worlds, and it was kind of back and forth. I was able to get some games.
Like, since Erase Face came out, I feel invulnerable.
Yeah. It's
and my new healing, but like again, most Rhinars aren't running like the heal version of Rhinar, so I don't know. I would say skill matchup because we have Arc Smash, because we have CNC, we have Erase Face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have the tools, the life gain.
Most of our cards block 3 if you're playing like not Cheetah. Okay,
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, you have no option to block against Rhinar either because they just intimidate your stuff.
I feel pretty bulletproof these days, but like let me say that I'm gonna go lose my next tournament to a dash. What do you think about Briar?
So interesting enough, I haven't played against Briar as Dash, but I've played against Dash as Briar.
Reverse engineer it.
And I've not lost against Dash as Briar. I guess it can be kind of high rolly. Dash typically wants to set up those Teklo pounders.
Yeah.
Briar obviously wants to hit the channel mounts.
Yep.
Briar has the ability to fatigue Dash if they choose and play it that way.
Yeah.
And because Dash doesn't want to play a fatigue game plan in Briar, I think Briar might have the edge in that matchup.
I think so too. Honestly, they're very tight, but Briar just has a little bit more cheese. Mm-hmm. And you can't go control against her.
Yeah, their ceiling is much higher, I would say. They have on hits too.
They can run snatches. Like if Dash could run snatch, she'd be better.
Or if they had Force of Nature.
Oh yeah, true. if Dash had Channel Mount Heroic Force of Nature, she'd be the best deck in the game.
Or an embodiment of Earth.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like Dash can't run generics, so there's a lot of cards that Briar gets that like are kind of just busted from the old days, like CNC, Snatch. Like she can CNC you for 12. Like what is that?
Yeah, and they both have a lot of variance to them. Briar can hit the all attack actions, all the non-attack actions, kind of ruin their turn. Dash can just hit all these blues and boost all the reds. Like they kind of so it kind of bounces out a little bit. And the thing is, like with Dash, when you're boosting, I consider the deck to have 2 of every card versus 3 of because you're boosting.
Yeah.
And Briar doesn't have the issue. She has 3 of every card.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, Dash can definitely win, but it depends like when Briar finds channel mount. Kind
Yeah.
of. Okay. What do you think about Isylander?
So I know that most people say it's good,
That's how yeah.
and I've honestly struggled in Isylander.
Dude, people keep telling me Rhinar's favorite. No. Isylander is the best deck in the game. It doesn't matter how good you are into Isylander. If you're not Isylander, you're not like favored.
To be fair, I haven't played against it since the hypothermia ban.
That's true. That's true.
So
Maybe
I
good.
definitely think, but I have played Isylander against Dash since then, and I have beaten Dash.
That's what I'm saying. Icelander's too. Yeah, I don't know. I think sure, maybe skill. I think
It's
Icelander's
definitely
one of the best decks. in
I
the
would
game.
say it's a skill matchup.
Has to be. Yeah.
It's
There's no favored matchup in the Icelander. I don't think,
tough. Yeah, it's not a free one by
except for
any means.
Dromai. Maybe Dromai's favored.
Yeah,
In my and Lexi.
yeah. It might
actually,
honestly, Dromai might even be a bad matchup.
yeah, Dromai and Lexi might be the only 2 favored decks into Icelander, in my opinion. And I'm playing one of the quote unquote favored matchups.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Icelander's just tough.
Yeah, she's too good. What about Boltyn? This is kinda like
Let's
a
see here.
fringe
Have I
pick.
even? I don't even know if I've ever played against Boltyn.
Yeah, I don't really know either.
I know that like obviously you don't block well against Boltyn because you're blocking with attack actions that trigger his hero
Yeah.
ability.
Yeah.
So obviously on his combo that's not good.
Yeah, that's true.
I imagine it wouldn't be great. I feel like Boltyn can set up very quickly on his combo.
I would guess that you're fast enough to make Bolton's life hard.
Yeah, you're definitely fast enough. The question, yeah, I guess the real question is on Boltyn whether they can get to their combo fast enough because you're not trying to combo his dash. You're just, you're just throwing damage at them.
I think that's how Bolton always is. He's like, do they draw in the first 4 turns? Yes.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. Do they not? You win.
Yeah, and that's the thing is too with their early turns they have to charge their soul, which is like a 3-card hand to push like 4.
4 like
Yeah,
4
like,
plus 3 at best.
They have a lot of cards that push very little damage until they get that very high damage output on their combo turn.
I would guess his favorite, but I don't know.
If they get to that combo, you might be in trouble. But
Yeah. I've been comboed on like turn 3 before.
yeah.
Okay. Bravo.
Bravo. I really feel like it's mostly on the Bravo, depending on your build, of course. It's just like Oldhim.
Okay.
The more you're able to, if you're able to pivot into more D-Racks, more kind of control, depending on how if they utilize their dominate well to push damage through and get you to a low life total before you set up your items, they can definitely win that game. I've been fairly consistent into winning that game just because you just have enough D-Racks typically.
You're really good at the flex plan too. Like that was where you're really good at that.
Exactly. I would say it's build dependent, but I don't know. It feels kind of favored to me.
I'd think so too.
Yeah.
Okay, so after this, we'll dive into the deck list, or a couple. We'll talk about that and cards, key cards, all that kind of stuff. See you there. I forgot Arakni. Where does he go?
It's also build dependent, but I mean, Arachne's just doesn't have the tools yet.
Yeah, I don't.
Like
We'll see after the next.
once
set.
Outsiders comes out, maybe it might.
Okay.
might be bad.
Now we're gonna go look at the cards. See you there. Okay. Hey everybody, we're here. We're back, drinking a little bit. Making some jokes. You know how it is. So here we go. I'll put this deck link in the description below. There are so many Dash decks out there, so many different variations. If you want to get into Dash, they do yourself a favor and like explore. There's Tree Frog Dash. There's what is that mech card called? Mecha Dash, whatever.
Mechanoid, yeah.
Mechanoid Dash. There's Full Boost Dash. There's Harpoon / Hanabi Blaster Dash. There's all sorts of stuff out there, okay? But we're just going to cover a couple of the key concepts and key cards here. So when we look at Dash and her equipment, can you give a quick explanation of like why these cards, and only these cards, are chosen, because a lot of other heroes run way more equipment than Dash does, like in the sideboard.
Yeah, Dash's equipment is you don't run a lot of it. They kind of just do what you want it to do.
It's all
Achilles
good.
Accelerator, you get an action point when you boost. You're typically boosting.
Yeah.
Of course, when you run into your controlling matchups, it's just kind of there. In the end game is kind of when you would boost. So that can be, just kind of the piece you need to just push through that extra damage at the end to kind of close out a game if you need to. Crown of Providence, obviously, once that released, that replaced Dark Knight Skullcap.
So good.
That card filter is very good, especially if you find that you've Arsenal max velocity and weren't able to get it off. You can just, block with it, send it back into your pitch stack, and set it up for later. The Galvanic Bender. So this list, I just replaced it with Goliath Gauntlet.
Okay.
I mean, in terms of value in this list, Goliath Gauntlet gives you 2 value. Galvanic Bender blocks for 1, so it's obviously less. So it's not necessarily better. But when you're running into Fai and Briar that are running, Snatch and whatnot, that one block and all your cards block for 3, that's kind of what it's there for.
Yeah, 1 block is less than 2 attack, clearly, right? Like very basic math. But when 1 block stops an entire card from being drawn by your opponent, that's more like 5 prevention than, or like 3.5 plus 1. So you're really looking at like 4.5 prevention over 2 damage. So it could be argued both ways.
Yeah. Tekla Foundry Heart, you wouldn't run any other chess piece. It blocks for 3.
So good.
You can use it to get the extra resource you need, that extra resource. I mean, you do burn 2 cards for it, but you can get an extra pistol. You can get that max velocity off. So it's just obviously the chess piece you'd run. And then Tekla Plasma Pistol, it's just
good.
Which is good, yeah.
There was a lot of hype around Hanabi Blaster, right? But it fell off really fast.
It's interesting because I only played it in more competitive settings in Blitz.
Yeah.
But I found I was getting 1 Hanabi Blaster off.
Yeah.
And when you start with Induction Chamber, you always have a blue that's worth 4.
Yeah.
It's just...
And I mean, I feel like this
more
card
consistent.
is another reason why Tekla Pistol is so good.
Yeah, High Octane, obviously, super awesome card. For a long time, I was running without them. I was just going more just pure aggro, just do damage.
Yeah.
High Octane, still an awesome card. I think it's actually optional in that case, although these days I tend to run it.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, obviously it pairs well if you're doing a Mechanoid, setting that up. Arsenal High Octane, play that out, boost a couple of times, and then use the Mechanoid 2 or 3 times. You're just doing a ton of damage.
Typically, I see High Octane turns as like one of the biggest spike turns outside of like Max V. You know? Okay.
And then a lot of cards, we're trying to play the cheapest cost cards we can. 0-1, those really facilitate your maximum velocity turns. It lets you get them off, fairly easily.
So,
the Pulse Wave Harpoon, there's
Only
one in
one?
the main deck.
Oh,
the other
okay.
2 are in the sideboard.
All right.
I think with this deck list particular, it's like, okay, there's 46 cards. You either side in all the pistol game plan or side in the rest of the boost cards.
Yeah.
The reason why there's only 1 in the main deck is I felt the high speed impact was more important. If you get to the end game and you need a boost, you're still not boosting 3 times in a pistol game plan to really get value off the Pulse Wave, but that potential dominate could come in handy.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So like in the pure the pure boost, you're putting them all in, right? Because you're gonna boost 3 times. But in the item matchup, Pulse Wave is only useful, honestly, if you boost 3+ times.
Yeah, they're both 1 for 4s. The only thing is you can start off with the high speed impact. You ask the question, do you want to give my next boosted attack dominate? When they're at 2 life, that's a pretty big ask.
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't have picked up unless I was a Dash player, right? Like I would have just shoved them in. But it makes total sense. Like this card is only valuable if you boost, and if you're going item, this is a flex list.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got your high speed impacts, 1 for 4s, 1 for 2s. You got your T-bones, 0 cost, boost for those max speeds, 0 to 60, those 0 cost boosts once again. Zipper hit,
1 for 5.
5. It's so good. If I had, oh my god.
I hate boosting that card away.
It's so good. Every time I see a red zipper hit go in the trash, I'm like, 1 for me.
Yeah.
Okay, and this card I think deserves a little bit of conversation real quick.
Oh,
So
I mean, that card's awesome. It,
yeah.
I mean, it does so much.
Yeah.
In the pistol game plan, you just go get your item.
Yeah.
In the boost game plan, you save it for the end. You empty your hand. Ideally, you have no arsenal. You play it. You get the Tekla core.
Yep.
You draw a card. Put it in the arsenal. You
Yeah,
have 5 card hand
and-
with 2 extra resources on your next turn.
And because of fab math, right? So 60 cards in the deck, you draw 4 on your first turn. Dash going first with 6 copies, plus typically they run more than 6 copies of items. So this card plus all of your items, you have like 6 to 9 copies of items in your deck.
Yeah.
There is more than a 50% chance you find an item.
Yeah. Turn
Turn
0.
zero.
Yeah, exactly. You can typically get something out.
Yeah. So Dash going first,
Yeah. It's
really good.
yeah. You got to be careful for that.
Okay. And then the rest of the main board here, which is interesting to me. Blue combustible couriers, not red.
So the red are in the sideboard.
Yeah.
So when you're boosting it, they come in. The blue is there. So some deck lists have opted to not go with combustible courier.
Okay.
I still like it, especially with the blue. Like if I throw a blue 2 cost and it has the potential to give me an extra 3 value, like they're gonna give me a card, which is they're gonna block 3 on a 2 attack.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you
Like-
whatever I have left.
It's cool. If that's like the best thing I can do in a terrible hand, like I'm fine with that. Like,
Yeah.
but mostly I'm just pitching to, and especially at the end too. It's like, okay, yeah, like,
It just
give me-
it's a blue block 3 that gives you 3 damage if it hits. It's not bad.
yeah.
Okay.
Tekla core, obviously, you have a Tekla core out. I don't think I can not get a maximum velocity off with the Tekla core out. Like it's just like, yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah, this is another one of those cards when it gets boosted. I'm like, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
get it out of here.
That's the thing is like I said, typically in a boost dash deck, you have 2 copies of each card.
Yeah.
2 Tekla cores in a game. I don't, unless I'm getting arc smashed while they're rolling a 6, those 2 Tekla cores are putting in the work and getting
They're
it
so
done for me.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the sideboard. So this is where it really matters with Dash, in my opinion. Like this is, like, obviously we're not looking at Tree Frog Dash or like Super Turtle Dash here. Otherwise, you'd see a bunch of healing items. But I would say most common list is the Flex Dash.
Yeah, it just gives you the most, I guess, opportunity to win games.
Yeah. So here we have,
Yeah, Combustible Courier, obviously for on-hit effect, it's your only on-hit effect. You run it.
yeah,
Like I said, some decks these days may be taking them out to get more. They'll be putting in like yellow T-bones, just cheaper, 0 costs. Those do facilitate those maximum velocities a little more.
Makes sense.
Because you don't have to pay 2 for them. But I just love the on-hit effect. It forces them to block.
yeah. And
So-
certain decks can't block like.
and if
5.
they don't block, well, what are you doing?
yeah, I'll always block this card because
Exactly.
it's I'm not giving you 3 extra damage for no reason.
Yeah, and I've literally won games where opponents have been like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to let you get the extra 3," and it's like, "Yep, that's the wrong decision every time."
You gave me a whole card's worth of value for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, then you have your D reacts like Fate for Seeing,
Yeah.
Sink Below, Unmovable, right?
Yeah, some people will run the Reinforce the Line, which buffs your attack actions by 4. I personally don't run them. I rather just have the Fate for Scenes.
Yeah.
I know Dori can actually punish you with route by that. You'll block with an attack action, and then instant the reinforced line. They'll route your attack action away, and now you're blocking 0.
And it
So-
nullifies Reinforce the Line.
Yeah, exactly. So you're blocking 0,
I
and
had
you lost
never
a card.
thought of that. I've never run that card before.
And I've not been punished by it, obviously, because I don't run reinforced line, but it's something to keep in mind.
I had never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got your D-React package here. You kind of have Combustible Courier, Throttle, which is just like a sick, brute equivalent
yeah.
go again card.
It's a popper. It's a go again. 2 for 6.
It's good.
Throttle is awesome.
Yeah, and then you have your what I would assume is your pistol faction, right? Like in inductions and plasma purifiers, right? This
2
is your,
chambers, 3 purifiers. That's kind of I feel like you need to have that against Oldhim.
Yeah,
You can get away with less against Bravo I found. Because they don't block as well, because they don't have Crown of Seeds.
And it's 3 plasma purifiers because it makes the break point of the pistol.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you're doing 2 and 2, you're throwing, 12 damage?
Yeah.
And
12 is blockable.
Yeah, Oldhim can block 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maximum velocity, obviously. That's the card.
This is the premier aggro dash card, right?
I can always get off 1 maximum velocity in a game, and I can oftentimes get off 2.
Yeah.
And then the third I end up banishing.
Yeah.
I've, like I said, I've even got I literally have gotten drawn into 2 maximum velocities, did a maximum velocity turn, and pocketed the other one just to do it again, all because of Teklo Core. That card can really enable a lot of those big turns.
What's your typical hand to fire max V?
Let's see here. So, I mean, honestly, I don't even need Teklo Core not Teklo Core, Teklo Foundry Heart. You can 1, 0, 0, and then into maximum velocity just with the blue.
Yeah, so you can pitch a blue, play a high speed impact, and do a 0, a T-bone, and then boom.
Yeah, even if I feel like every time I do that, it's a T-bone blue for 1, and I don't care because there's 10 coming behind.
Because there's a 2 for 10.
I'm pulling your equipment, and I'm doing 10 afterwards.
Yeah, I wish I had a card like this. Oh my gosh. Okay.
And the great thing about maximum velocity is it doesn't care about how many boost attacks are on the chain. It just means in the turn. So you can close the chain at any point. You can use Teklo Foundry Heart to get the extra resource you need. Yeah. If you say you have 2 1 cost boost attacks, or if you have a 2 cost and 2 0 cost, you can still get it off.
That's crazy.
And that's without Teklo Core. So.
Okay. I mean, the final cards, we talked about Pulse Wave. This goes in with your boost package, no big deal. And then why 1 copy of Teklo Pounder?
I found that when I run 2, I make a lot of decisions to try to play it out where I'm giving up tempo where I shouldn't be giving up tempo.
Okay.
Also, Teklo Pounder, if you start with it, a lot of decks will just block out until it's gone.
Yep.
So these days I don't really start with it unless I have a feeling that they're just not going to want to block at all. Then I'll start with it. And then on those turn 0s, if you get that Spark of Genius item, I usually just start with Induction Chamber these days. But if for some reason you do get to turn 0, you get that Spark of Genius or run into it, it's okay, set it up, Arsenal card, and then we're going full ham immediately.
I mean, that's true. As soon as if my opponent literally starts with a Teklo Pounder on the table, I'm I know what I have to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to block it. It only lasts 3 turns.
Even Kano will just sit there and block out until it's gone.
Yeah, it's it's only 3 turns. I can give up my strategy for 3 turns,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's and more often than not, when they start with it on the table, that's their whole game plan.
Yeah,
right.
It's also a non-block is another big issue. I really wanted to, when I pivoted into the pistol game plan, I wanted to minimize the non-blocks as much as I could. Before, when I was running 2 or 3, it was just especially because you can only pitch them really in that game plan, you're just ending up where you're at the end and you can't block all of a sudden.
Yeah, honestly,
4 non-blocks. And it's just oh no.
Yeah, honestly, looking at it too, Teklo Pounder is not that great of a value. It's a 2 cost, 6 damage card. Mm-hmm. That ends your turn. It doesn't have go again. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if you go ahead and you pull it up with Spark of Genius, sure. Okay. Yeah. It's a little better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But this is a Rhinar card, a 2 for 6 Rhinar card that doesn't block.
Yeah.
Which isn't good.
If you can set up against Isylander, it's nice because you typically want to come in with a big boost attack on the first one. So if you throttle for 8 and they shut down your turn, you still threw 8 damage at them.
You did something.
Yeah. But I still wouldn't start with it in that example. But
yeah. All right. Well, I mean, really interesting. A lot of really good insight here. Okay. Well, let's dive into the closing section real quick. Let's see you there. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to Ryan for coming on the channel. Petting my dog. Look at him in the background there, Bear, my little boy. But thanks so much for coming on, teaching us about Dash. Very complex hero. You guys can catch Ryan crushing Pacific Northwest tournaments on Dash top 8 in our battle hardens, just putting everybody in the floor, and doing pretty good at, like nationals and worlds and the like, right? But yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody here who's interested in playing Dash appreciates it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure. I'm hoping to bring you on in the future. We can drink some more, maybe talk. It'll be a fun time.
Yeah.
But thanks, everybody. Have a great day. I'll see you around.